Well, good evening, good morning, good day, wherever you are in the world today. My name is Herb and I'm an alcoholic. Welcome to our Big Book 12-Step Workshop. Please join me in prayer. God, please set aside everything that I think I know about myself, my unmanageability, the 12 steps, and you, for an open mind and a new experience with myself, my unmanageability, the 12 steps, and especially you. Please join me in the serenity prayer. God, grant me the serenity to accept the things that cannot change, courage to change the things I can, and wisdom to know the difference. Well, this will conclude, tonight will conclude the series of teaching on the 12-step process, the methodology of understanding and applying the instructions from the big book to our personal lives. We've been on the journey since January, taking at least 3 months to unpack and experience step 1. And then several months, probably over 4, to unpack and experience step 4. They're related. A good friend of mine said step 4 is actually the experience of step 1 in writing. It's a brilliant insight, which Bill acknowledges in terms of our experience of powerlessness. And we've spent some time at the very beginning of the workshop understanding that this is not a religion with a lot of rules and regulations, but this is a way of life. A way of life. This isn't a process and a task that we accomplish. Check the box, did the steps. I hear it all the time. Oh, I did the steps. Oh, I did the steps out of the big book. Yeah. Oh, I did the steps in your workshop out of the big book. Well, all right. How's your life today? Are you living a way of life? The word channel I picked up from the St. Francis prayer. It's a wonderful word to describe the hoped for impact of applying these first 9 steps to our lives and having the spiritual awakening, and then keeping that channel clear. The channel being us. I'm the channel of life. I'm the channel of grace. I'm the channel of the Spirit. The channel. There's a flow to me, through me, in me, to others. That's the whole point of this 12-step transformation. Metamorphosis. It's a great word. If you're not familiar with it, look it up. If you haven't looked at, really seriously, if you haven't watched the 4-minute time-lapse video of the monarch butterfly, do yourself a favor. It's a meditation. 4 minutes. And you'll see in those 4 minutes what we've been through. If you've showed up and done some of the work, not all of the work necessarily, but some of the work, you will relate to that. We went into the chrysalis, a caterpillar, and we're coming out a resurrection of true authenticity, a monarch butterfly. Yeah, I'm being a poetic tonight. But we need to keep that channel clear with the step 10 spot check inventory. And then there's two aspects to step 11. We've emphasized one aspect, and that's the morning practice. That's my most favorite part of the 11th step, but certainly maybe of the steps themselves, of the entire way of life and spirituality. That morning practice, that improving our consciousness. The other part, of course, is inventory at night, sort of a companion with the 10th step, and each of them a reiteration of step 4. But it's not just about us. We learned that, we experienced that, the big book taught us that, the big book showed us the way in step 3. It's a commitment to turn. Made a decision to turn. That's the step. From what to what? From my self-centeredness to other-centeredness. That's the turning. I commit to it in step 3. I'm delivered to it in step 9. Well, that's how Bill defines spiritual awakening, doesn't he, in Appendix 2? It's a change in us that's done to us, not by us. So that, in fact, we become lanterns, allowing the light that is unblocked in us. We're not the light, but we have the light in us, and it's unblocked in us through steps 4 through 9. And then it shines in us, to us, and eventually through us as we stand by the path to be helpful. I use the term usefulness in this slide. It's a word that's peppered throughout the big book. The word itself, let alone the synonyms for the word. Clear the channel on a daily basis, spot check, removing the clouds of darkness so the light can shine in us, to us, and then through us. That change, as I've mentioned right from the beginning, is radical. Radical at the root. It changes the way we think. It changes the way we feel. It changes most especially and visibly and measurably the way we behave. I've asked you to take a look at the 4 questions that we originally asked you to ask yourself at the beginning of this workshop. Why do I want to do this work? Why now? Am I willing to go to any length? And what does that mean? And am I willing to be honest? Or where am I not being honest with myself and with others? I've asked you to look at those answers from January of this year and contrast that with your current consciousness. Has there been a shift in your thinking? Has there been a shift in the way you react in terms of your emotions? Has there been a shift, most especially in your behavior? And if you have any doubt, ask your partner or your friends. Done to us, not by us, but not without us. That's that grace and willingness combination that we've talked throughout the year about. No explanation, but an attempt to observe it, to confirm it. Last week I talked about, or 2 weeks ago, I talked about the principles, and I had a slide up that I recognized I hadn't paid much attention to recently. And it was incorrect based on the way I started out this year, fine-tuning the way of life document. So I corrected it in step 10, especially. Vigilance. But I also made some changes in the action component, trying to give it a little bit more clarity. Even it's very succinct, but I expanded it just a little bit. And I will be modifying the way of life document for the workshop in 2022 to reflect what you're seeing here. Step 10, vigilance. Well, only because Bill, I don't mean that in any tense or rigid way, but Bill says in the big book, watch for vigilance. All right. What are we watching for? Disturbance. That's what the 12 and 12 confirms for us. Whenever we're disturbed, there's something wrong with me. But I use that word from step 3, that commitment through turn, to be in alignment. So in step 10, we're paying attention to our emotions when they're in or out of alignment. Mostly we know it when they're out of alignment because we suffer. It's very interesting to me, and it's in the Way of Life document on page 57, that the 12 steps are built specifically, at least as I approach them and understand them, for us as human beings. I mentioned right at the beginning of the workshop, the 2 things that make us human are not our emotions, are not our ability to grow and move around. No, the 2 things that make us specifically human are that we can think with our cortex. We have a reflective mind. We know that we know, and we can transcend ourselves and watch ourselves. And no other sentient being, based on our current evaluation, science, can do that. No other sentient being can do what we do. Know that we know, and know that we don't know, and be puzzled even by that in a reflective way. And that we can make a free and voluntary decision, completely free. And the big book is built on that basis. With our will, we decide and take action. And with our mind, we know and we name. And all of the even steps are knowing and naming. You can read it, naming the power, naming the obstacles, naming the defects that come from the obstacles, naming the harms that come from the defects, naming the disturbances that comes from the defects and the harms. It's pretty awesome, actually, when you look at it from this perspective, to see the integration and the clarification that the steps give us about human development and human nature. With our will, we concede. That's a term from page 30. It's not from step 1 itself, but the vocabulary on page 30, I think, is even stronger than the step 1 on page 59. Admit is kind of gentle. On page 30, it says, concede to our innermost self that we do not have a choice. With regard to our addiction, pretty straightforward. But what I pummeled you with, I hope that you heard it and experienced it, is that we don't have a choice with regard to managing our own lives on our own power. Those bedevilments. That's pandemic and applicable to the entire human race, not just a percentage like addiction does. And then, as I mentioned in step 3, we decide for that relationship. It's a commitment to have a relationship with that power that we hope is available. And we clean that channel by disclosing everything we discovered in the naming process, and then seeing again the powerlessness and praying for power, praying for removal, praying for clarity, praying for the removal of the darkness. And then again, making a commitment to change. We don't have the power to control outside of ourselves or inside of ourselves, but we do have the power to change our behavior when we walk hand in hand with the spirit of the universe, as he confirms in that meditation, the promises on page 75. We commit to amend, meaning change our behavior, while we're repairing the damage. All in pursuit of a spiritual consciousness. The whole point of this is awakening. Bill uses the term improve in step 11. I've adopted the word enlarge from his confirmation on page 14. We enlarge our spiritual life through work and self-sacrifice with others. This is the spiritual coin, 2 sides, a relationship with other with a capital O, step 11, a relationship with others, the vast array of humanity, on the other side of the coin, improving our conscious contact in meditation and enlarging our consciousness through helping others. I call it spiritual sobriety. There's got to be a better term for it. It comes off of the word that's been used for step 10, emotional sobriety. I like the term. Bill used it for his article in 1958 in the Grapevine, emotional sobriety. Doesn't quite fit spiritual sobriety. I'll come up with a better word next year, I'm sure. My own spiritual director is writing a book. He's not in a 12-step program, but he's very impressed with the effectiveness and the power of the 12-step methodology. And he's writing a book on mystical sobriety. That should be interesting. But we know it's not an event. I've been consistent in commenting on process and integration. Physical sobriety is guaranteed in the big book. It's not the word that's in the big book. It's my interpretation of the word in the big book on pages 84 and 85. Bill said, we enter the world of the spirit. We are placed in a position of neutrality. Hear the grace, we are placed. We are placed in a position of neutrality. Our willingness to do the work, steps 1 through 9, to get us there, to be delivered, a term that I've just recently adopted from hearing Bill Wilson say that was his conclusion of his mountaintop experience on his 2nd or 3rd day of hospitalization back there in 1934, December. He was delivered. I just love that term. Well, it very much correlates with the comment he makes on page 25, doesn't it? That we are rocketed into a 4th dimension. Well, we got to get on the rocket. We got to get in the rocket. But we are delivered to where the rocket takes us. That first I believe, recommendation in the big book, step 10, is to keep the channel clear. Emotional sobriety, to stay in alignment with reality, to create homeostasis, a sense of balance, a sense of equanimity. Large words, but they really capture what we're talking about here in terms of being in alignment with the flow of reality. And the will is the primary focus of spirituality, to be empowered in 11th step and to actually increase that power, enlarge that consciousness by helping other people. And we've heard the slogans, you can't give away what you don't have, but the moment you begin giving away what you do have, not only do you keep it, but you expand it. It's counterintuitive. It's one of those paradoxes that you have to experience and actually to really understand or to know it at all. But at the same time, that dimmer switch goes down a notch at a time. My favorite analogy for this process, dimmer switch. It goes up a notch at a time, but it goes down a notch at a time. Unmanageability, those bedevilments, Bill confirms it. Page 84 and 85. Again, that transition into the world of the spirit. He said, we're not cured. Oh, neutrality. Yes, absolutely. With regard to our addiction, that first half of the first step. But we're not cured. Second half of the first step. Unmanageability. Willfulness. It's not a negative comment in the sense of blaming. All it is naming. This is the human condition. That's why originally I used the term brokenness, but during this workshop, I changed the set-aside prayer to unmanageability because it more accurately reflects what we're talking about here, that spiritual malady, that cancer of the soul, that my will always choose me on its own power. And that when I have an infusion, please hear that word. I've been toying with it for the last couple of days. When we have an infusion of grace, I mean, completely saturated with the Spirit, our will is empowered with the Spirit. But if we allow resentment and fear and secrets and unhealthy sexual behavior to begin to develop in our lives, it hijacks us. That obsession returns because the spiritual shield is vulnerable. And the darkness descends and we're back into relapse. Whatever addiction it is that is your primary or your secondary. When the darkness descends, because the shield, the spiritual shield isn't there, eventually we don't have a sufficient power. We're back in unmanageability and we're back into being hijacked by the obsession. And then, of course, we're back into our addiction, whatever that is. No choice. We cannot prevent the obsession with our knowledge. We cannot prevent the obsession. We cannot prevent the obsession with our prayer and our meditation or our work for other people. Those are all wonderful tools on our part that somehow mysteriously translate into grace, but I can't explain that. I can observe it. Grace is always available. But our willfulness drops the curtain. Step 10 is a practice of conscience. I use this term now, practice, throughout my conversation tonight, because it's about our way of life, a practice. Life is a practice. Every morning I wake up, I get to do it over again in some way, improving if I'm conscious, receiving the light, trying to stay aware of my feelings as signals of being in alignment or being out of alignment, which is really the key for step 10. Anytime I'm disturbed, whatever that means, a broad umbrella term, disturbed. I'm uncomfortable in some way, ill at ease. That's a signal. Something's amiss. Pay attention. It's usually some form of self-will. And we have a formula for taking care of that. Personal responsibility to be back in alignment with the 4-step process of step 10. I'm not going to review that with you. We've done that. The whole point is to be aware. This process is about consciousness. I use a lot of different words as synonyms for that. I wrote a reflection and I believe it was sent out. Perhaps God is consciousness. And what we do is wake up, becoming conscious of the consciousness that is our life source. It's a very powerful thought, very consoling thought. I don't know whether it's true or not, but I live as if it is, so that we can become a lantern. I'm really clear I'm not the light. I'm the vehicle, the vessel, the tabernacle. I am responsible for the efforts and not the results. What a relief it is to know that I just have to show up, do the best I can, and quite frankly, acknowledge at the end of it, it wasn't the best I could, and know that that was the best I could, even though it wasn't the best I could. I hope you're hearing that. I'm not talking gobbledygook. I'm just cutting myself a lot of slack in the best and healthy sense. And a lot of that is very aware of the perfectionists in the group. And we've talked about that. It's not about trying hard and being perfect at all. It is about showing up and being willing to be taken for a ride. It's a journey, this way of life, not a destination, a way of life. It doesn't conclude on Friday. It doesn't conclude by the end of December. Oh, the step process does, but not this journey. That's the process and experience. And that's what we'll be unpacking over the next couple weeks. The last part of assignment 30 is to take a look at your experience in terms of your consciousness, in terms of your feelings, in terms of your behavior. And I use this very fancy word, self-realization. Well, what that means is take a look at it and parse it. REAL-I-zation. Making I, myself, real, authentic. The true human being, becoming a lantern. Well, what's the purpose of becoming a lantern? Step 12 tells us, is to transmit the light. A practice guided by principles. That's why I believe it's really important to get the principles and understand the principles and periodically review the principles. I found that I had some principles that were laying fallow that I hadn't used when I did that fourth step way back when in 1988 for the very first time, 4 years sober. But the better discovery was that I didn't have some principles that I really wanted to have in order to become a decent human being. So I had to define what those were and adopt them. Literally, consciously adopt principles that I didn't have, that I didn't even know were principles, but that I chose with my free will to incorporate into my life and make an effort to have them become organic. A very conscious process, not of feelings. A very conscious, thoughtful process translated into behavior. An intention to help other people. All my life, I had chosen professions exploring their possibilities for me as a career that were all about helping other people, but it was never about helping other people. It was about prestige or professional credibility or the money that went with it or the power that went with it as I anticipated the career. Even in AA, it wasn't there to really help others. I was doing what I was told and I was looking good. I wanted the reputation of helping other people. I wasn't that interested in getting my hands so dirty. But once I did the steps, it became an organic drive that has possessed me, and in the best of senses. Because I finally, after all those years of seeking, became a finder. After all those years of literally suffering, restless, irritable, and discontent, I became quiet. I became serene. My life became smooth. And the word I used back in the day, in 1990, after I had a year of meditation practice, was that my life flourished. I didn't realize that within that 10-year period from 1990 to 2000, there was a new exploration of psychology at the University of Pennsylvania on positive psychology, and the author of that movement, positive psychology, Seligman, wrote a book called Flourish, which I came across 10 years later. This is the effort that we engage in this process to have a life that flourishes. I was not motivated by unconditional love. I was motivated by my unredeemable narcissism in the beginning. But as I've mentioned to you from my spiritual director, he said, God writes straight with crooked lines. I used the word in the 12th step, if you paid attention to that list that I had previously today, of altruism. For me, that's the best synonym for unconditional love. Altruism. If you find one that's better, please bring it to my attention. Altruism, doing something for the benefit of somebody else with no possible benefit for yourself, or maybe intentional benefit for yourself. Not self-interest. Another fancy word, self-transcendence. That this model and these words, some of them come from the Maslow chart on human development, where he talks about the dignity of the human being, not in spiritual terms, but in psychological development terms. Lighting the path for others. That's the whole purpose of the lantern, is to stand by a path. Each of our paths are different. Each of our invitations are different. Each one of us has a different fingerprint. Each one of us has a different DNA. That DNA has never been, is not currently, and never will be again except in you. That's a pretty unique person, each one of us. And each one of us has that invitation. Father Dowling said to Bill in their first meeting at the end of about a 3 or 4 hour conversation, he said, Bill, you have a unique gift. It has never appeared in the world before this, and it will never appear again. If you don't exercise the gift you've been given, it will be lost forever. Well, you can tell it. I mean, even repeating it as many times as I have, it's such a powerful invitation for each one of us, because each one of us has that unique ability to help somebody just because we are who we are and have experienced what we've experienced. Not because we're brilliant and not because we're spiritual, but just because we are who we are. Becoming a lantern and lighting the path. So some of you have seen some of my slides before. It's a great question. Many of us are looking because of the Disney training for the white knight or the fairy godmother or the magic wand or the fairy dust. A psychologist in the West Side had this sign over his office. You've heard me talk about it probably. Nobody's coming. Oh my God. It sounds so negative, and yet it's not. Because it just reminds me, I'm the one that I'm waiting for to show up, to wake up, to live life, my life, consciously. So more of a little bit of that next week and the following week as we wrap it up. I'd like to hear from you today about any questions that you have, certainly on the step work that you're doing. But the two questions I've asked you to ask yourself is, other than taking a look at the original questions and all the questions that we've asked during the time from the beginning, especially at the beginning, to measure or to at least evaluate your, if there's been any shift in your consciousness. The two questions that going forward now for next week, next Tuesday and the following Tuesday, I would love you to share with us, all of us, is what your commitment is going forward. Some of you are still doing your fourth step. Are you committed to finishing your fourth step? And how are you going to do that? And when are you going to do that? And the second part of that is, and to whom are you going to hold yourself accountable for your commitment? Maybe some of you, most of you have finished your fourth and fifth step, or will by the end of December, because that was part of my recommendation, that you have that as at least a soft target. Well, what about 6 and 7 and 8 and 9? Are you planning on pursuing, with or without the workshop? If I were to say any one thing that everybody could grasp, I can talk about consciousness, I can talk about awakening, I can talk about spirituality, and people kind of like, yeah, maybe not. Freedom, everybody can relate to that. And that's really the heart of the promise. Freedom from addiction and freedom from the bedevilments, from unmanageability. Yeah, freedom. Not joy, not happiness necessarily, although those do come as a result of the freedom from addiction and the freedom from our self-centeredness. But that's really the promise of this process. And that's why regularly we talk about how free do you want to be as the ultimate criteria and the value proposition for finishing the fourth step, for finishing the ninth step, for being generous with your dedication to this process. How free do you want to be? It's your choice. Nobody's coming. Each one of us is the person that we're waiting for to show up. to take responsibility, to be conscious, and to be in alignment.
I just wanted to take a minute. You receive a lot of thanks, and you certainly have our gratitude, but I wanted to extend our thanks to Tanya and to Ali and to the host of other people that I know are involved in doing service for this workshop. We're so grateful. Just want to say thank you all very much. And Herb, please pass on our gratitude to anyone else who's not here tonight.
Yeah.
That's it.
Yeah, I have a team of about 25 people that literally support me on a weekly, daily basis for the work of this workshop and the others that are manifest through the YouTube and the podcast. So yeah, it's a pretty awesome group of people that have dedicated to making sure that you have as much resource as possible so that you can accomplish what it is you're trying to accomplish. So thanks for that shout out.
Thank you.
Yeah.
I don't know for anybody else, but this was a great summary tonight. And as part of it, I was thinking about my journey this last year with you. And, I've been in a program of some kind for 36 years. And this is the first time I really understood unmanageability. I'm in OA and always thought it was always my food that was unmanageable. And you made it so clear to me that is peanuts. That's the beginning of step one. The rest of everything is about my unmanageability and my mind and my body and my will. And thinking even ahead to next week, but it has made a huge difference for me and the way I use step 10 to help on that. And I am for sure a better person today than I certainly was last January. And you've given me coping skills, you and everybody else on here, right? I'm like that little to serve with love, how do you thank the person that's taken you from crayons to perfume? I'm not comparing you necessarily to Sidney Poitier, but I am, just really grateful that I am so better able to cope with life. And I've just had that with an episode. I'm in the middle of a medical issue right now, and I'm not off the wall. I'm not whatever, because I'm working it through the steps. I'm, talking about it. Yeah. I've got a God squad. I'm here. And I have to truly thank you and everybody here for helping me grow up this year and to really understand unmanageability, and that I'm the one, it's my life that wasn't manageable. And I wake up in the morning able to start every day with a set of tools as unmanageability creeps in, because it will continue to creep in. But I can recognize it, and I do the set aside prayer with unmanageability, and it's really made all the difference. So I thank you for that, and I might finally be maybe approaching 20.
Well, I really appreciate, especially the phrase coping skills. It gives us coping skills. Yes, exactly. For just living our life. It's a way of life, but because of the ingredients of it, we're able to have it, without repeating itself. That's wonderful. I appreciate the phrase.
And the other thing is that when I realized that, and you talked about freedom, when I have the abilities to deal with my unmanageability, I do get freedom. That is the outcome. Yeah. Is, most of the time I am free, as if I do things, then it gives me freedom.
I think that's part of what's not emphasized. And it's a new emphasis for me, just in the way I say it. And that is, yes, we are powerless. That is the truth, both in terms of our addiction and our unmanageability. But the purpose of this process is power. Mm-hmm. My empowerment. I am to become powerful. Yes, powerful and responsible to manage my life and then help others reduce their suffering so that they can manage their lives and help others reduce their suffering. And this is multi-level marketing at its best.
Yeah, for sure. And the other thing is with power, I have choice, because I know what to do on a daily basis to have freedom and to manage my unmanageability. And that's my will, right? So, but it's linked to choice, and I make choices every day.
Yeah.
Do I want to follow the actions, or do I want to sit in the shit? So,
yeah. And sometimes we need the graphic picture because it really represents, that's the truth. Thanks very much.
I'm saving all of the wonderful things I have to say about you and this group till the end. So I'm not going there tonight.
Right.
What I do want to talk about, because it's actually interesting, this was the subject of my prayer and meditation this morning. And it has been many, many times and of discussions. But tonight, when you were talking about, I'm just looking at my notes here. I'm responsible for the effort, not the results. It's a process, not a destination. Or it's a journey, not a destination. Process, not a task. Experience, not an event. Yes, and you know what? That to me is sometimes very uncomfortable, because I'm results oriented and I want to know. Just tell me where I'm going to be, and then I'll be fine with the process. So. And I know that,
as long as I can control it, I'm fine.
or if I know it's gonna tell me it's gonna be doom and yeah, if I can control it. And you know what? I've certainly gotten a lot better with that uncomfortable. I don't know what else to call it. It's an uncomfortability, but it's a really difficult thing for me. It's a lot of anxiety
How about control?
The control, no, the not knowing, that uncomfortability of, and even though like I feel only hope and possibilities, I really don't feel doom and gloom. Just that kind of free floating anxiety of, and then you're going to tell me if that's what it is, control, then I'll have to just kind of meditate on that, that not knowing, just tell me where I'm going to be. What's it going to look like? Am I going to be happy?
If you choose to be, but what it sounds to me like a trust issue. You don't trust the universe, you don't trust God, you don't trust yourself. Maybe, I don't know, just I'm poking at it.
Maybe this being independent is new enough to me that I don't completely trust, or I don't try. I guess either you trust or you don't.
Yeah.
So you think that might be what it is, this just, because I've wondered, is that what it means, that I just don't trust God 100%? I need signs, just because I remember there were times in my recovery that I would say, God, just show me a sign right now. I just need a sign.
Yeah.
And inevitably I would see one, but I feel like I'm past.
But that's very human. That's who we are. We want something tangible, measurable. Yeah. But see, there's where that faith comes in, and then the belief, and then the trust, and it's a process. And you're in it. You're on it. It'll improve. I'm confident, as long as you stay. As I use that image. Stay gently pressed up against it. That's all. There's no violence here. There's certainly no control. Influence, yes. And is it better today than it was 11 months ago?
Oh my God. Yeah. No, I'm going to answer those questions. Oh my God. I've changed so much in this last 11 months. I am truly a different person.
See, what in the truth of it is, you're more the Paula that is authentic than you've ever been in your life, probably.
Yes. And that is what it feels like.
Yeah.
And I am really clear that I am the person that's going to save me. And I'm the only one that can do it. And of course I want to do it. It's my life.
Right.
I never felt like that. I always wanted a man to come and fix it and save me, Part
of the culture too. And I would imagine that many of the women that relate to that, maybe some of the men even. That's correct. Yeah. I thought power and money were going to fix it. Yeah, it didn't, of course.
No, of course not.
Right.
Okay, thank you.
What I've kind of come to over the year of doing this is that I need to look at what's being lighted up in me,
Mhm.
not the situations of my life. So if I look at what's being lighted up in me and do what I can do there, where my hands are, then the rest God will take care of. It's not easy, but my job is, like you were saying earlier, it's just to show up. It's not to fix it. And I went and spent some time with my aunt last week, and it was really good. And I got some information that kind of, well, I had been praying for some other way to look at my childhood. And I got one piece of information that just completely revolutionized my story
Hmm.
and completely gave me a whole new way of looking at it, a whole new pair of glasses.
Was
And
that
it was just,
helpful then?
it was
Was
very
that-
helpful.
Oh, okay. All right, good. Yeah.
And because it just gave me a whole different view of everybody I grew up with, my whole family of origin. It shifted everything. And so that was just really a miracle for me. And I wanted to mention that.
Yeah.
As far as what the program has done, what this has done for me, following this method that we have this year, it's definitely given me that. It's given me a different way of looking at my own self and processing it. So it's like a whole new language almost that I'm learning.
Oh, yes.
And it feels like French right now, but you just keep working those nouns and just keep working to figure out where the verbs go, and
Yeah.
just keep doing what's in front of me, what's in my hands right now. And
That's a really good I want to comment on that because that's a really good insight. I hadn't thought of it because I've been doing these workshops now for 25 years. So I've really gotten a language. And it changes each year. It expands, or it expands each year. And I grow into it, not realizing that I'm speaking Greek to a lot of people. Right?
right.
Yeah.
Well, a lot of people don't have the ears to hear it yet. I mean, they can only hear this much of what you said tonight. They might have heard 5 minutes of it.
Yeah.
And other people can hear 10 minutes because they've heard this other 10 minutes over here, and it clicks into place.
And that's
Like
a lot of times why people come back for many years in a row, feeling like they sort of unpack it as they get more used to the vocabulary. Yeah, very good. Mm-hmm.
And that's also what the steps do, because what I've kind of noticed as I've worked the steps is when I remember when I first worked the step 1 with a sponsor, I kind of had an understanding of it, but when I finished step 2 with my sponsor, I understood step 1 so much better.
Yeah.
And so it translates itself
Yes.
as we go.
That is
And
correct. Mm-hmm.
it's a part of the relationship and a part of that building that we're doing with our individual higher powers is the translator.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
The relationship is the translator. And so as we go, the translator just gets more and more clear, and it becomes more and more a part of us, or for me anyway. It becomes more and more a part of me, and then I'm actually living that way of life instead of just trying to do this thing over here and trying to do that step over there and trying to see how I can incorporate this idea and
Yeah.
that idea.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
So that's kind of my reflection.
Yeah. Yeah.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Thanks
Yeah.
for letting me share, and
There's a
thanks to
part
everyone
of
who
it.
has been sharing.
Yeah. There's a part of it that is like osmosis, that in fact we absorb it to experience it in order to understand and explain it. Yes. And that's why I do use the term, the spirit seeps in. In fact, today I almost startled myself with a image that I used that I don't recall using before, and that was about that saturation of the spirit. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
One of the things my aunt said while we were traveling was that, I do everything I can and then I give it all to God. And she said, that's a falsity. She
That's a
said,
what?
that's not the way to do it.
That's what?
Falsity. It's false. That's
Oh yeah.
false.
Oh yeah.
It's not the way to do it. It's backwards.
Hmm.
We need to give it all to God and then do what's in front of us.
Okay. I think it works both ways. Sure. Yeah. And play with that. Yeah, that's good. Thank you for so much.
I think what I'm committing myself to is just a diligence of mind and a diligence of practice, in a couple of different areas, just the spiritual practice of, maintaining a daily 10, 11, 12, and just the different, meditational practice and some of the other tools that we use in the program, but also just becoming more of a giving person, and also really being diligent about, maybe diligence isn't the right word for this, but just like really doubling down on trust and faith, because I think through this work, what I'm realizing is that, it turns out that I'm actually okay. And, I'm actually, I'm good at taking care of myself and protecting myself. And all these fears that I have were somewhat unfounded. And, it's not that I never went through anything rough. It's just that I held on to it for so long with such a tight grip.
Yeah.
And used that, and that became my identity to myself, and my excuse. And it's not like I'm giving, protecting myself or standing up for myself, but I can definitely let down my guard a little bit, I think, and I don't have to be on edge, because I don't think the world's against me. I don't think people are out there like plotting against me as they wake up in the morning. And I am powerless, but the power, I think it's what some other people said, there's a powerfulness in that, in the sense that, I can live in acceptance and faith and goodwill to other people. And I think as long as those are my aspects that I'm looking at life from, that's my protection.
Yeah.
So that's kind of where I'm at.
Yeah. The image is in the title of Chuck C's book, A New Pair of Glasses. Is the lens we look through gives us the picture that we perceive. If we have a positive lens, then the world will be sunlight. If we have a negative lens, then the world will be darkness.
Yeah, and the funniest thing is it really does all come down to a choice.
That's a spiritual awakening.
Yeah, I really don't need to ruffle my feathers and puff out my chest to prove that I am the right one. I just went through Thanksgiving, and of course, there were buttons that were pushed, but it's like I look down and I go, oh, the button's been pushed in. That's interesting. Huh. I don't really need to, I'll just wait for it to eject back out. I don't really need to like activate.
Yeah.
You know, and the funniest thing happens is when you let those buttons be pushed and you don't respond or react, it's usually just things just get smoothed over immediately.
Bam. That's a spiritual awakening.
You know,
that's right. Yep.
and I don't know if it's because, like, for example, my mom said something, it really pushed a deep button, and I just kind of just was like, water off the duck's back. And I don't know if it's because she realized she pushed it, or she felt guilty about doing something like that, or what was going on. But then the next thing I know is like 5 minutes later, everything's fine.
Yeah. Well, for whatever reason, you don't need to explain it, but it's wonderful that you observe it.
Yeah.
Hi, Herb and everybody. I will be doing my 5th step this Sunday with my sponsor.
There you go.
And this whole process has been very humbling for me because I sort of really understood that I'm scared and that how can I say this, that that I learned that I had to go slowly and gently with myself.
Good.
And not to feel like I've always thought of myself as some quick study that I had to be first in the class or good or better, best type thing.
Right.
And this has been quite a humbling experience in that I am I am where I am, and I know people have finished and all this sort of thing, but to be okay with that, and you keep reiterating that, you keep saying it's okay wherever you are, and I've never believed it, you know.
Right.
So anyways, it's just an acknowledgement that I will. I mean, I have a commitment. I mean, I haven't left, even though, you know, I've usually when I fall behind, I leave, you know, because I'm not, for lots of different ego reasons, I'm sure.
Right.
So anyway, so and I just realized this morning that I have 2 more, I put wounds, resentments against my husband. Now, wait a minute, do I keep them for next year because I signed up again? Or do I do this, include this in my 5th step, which is, you know, my 4th step is like this thick already?
Yep.
So I guess you're saying do it now, right?
Throw them in there.
Throw them in, okay.
Yep.
And the other thing you talked about tonight was power.
Yep.
I'm sort of getting a handle on my powerlessness, although I don't like being powerless. And then you're sort of saying that this is about getting power.
Yeah.
And I don't quite understand that. I don't quite comprehend that. So hopefully next year that I'll be able to assimilate more and because I think I'm afraid of power. There's some sort of strange thing going on. So anyway, just like you said about speaking French or Latin or whatever, but it's my ability to, I'm seeing myself as a person in so much denial, which I never thought I was, you know. So I thought I was very realistic, etc. But I have such, my fear has just put down all sorts of ways for me to protect myself.
That's it.
And slowly there's sort of, you know, like I'm finding myself, what's the word, being triggered. And it's like, whoa, I am being triggered. That, and I'm starting to understand it, and it's happening. And before I would just have a meltdown or something like that and totally not get it. But and to realize that I am part of this process, and then to find out that I'm sort of allowing it to happen or something, you know, that it's, anyway, this whole thing has been quite a process for me. But I do want to say that I'm on my 5th step, you know, that I will do it, and I have a commitment to finish. Yeah.
But you just described was the experience that you were trying to define, because you said, I talked about receiving power. What you just described was empowerment. Now I'm conscious of what's going on, whereas before I was just reacting.
Totally.
That's empowerment.
Good.
Yeah.
So I'm trying to put 2 and 2 together to sort of, okay, understand that. Good. Okay, thank you.
Yeah. No, thank you for sharing that, Rita. All right.
I feel like I have a foot in two worlds right now. Like, you know, I came into the workshop late. We were almost on step 4. So I missed a lot of the beginning. And I feel like I know there's a better way to handle things. I know my higher power is there, but there's still a lot of confusion. I'm sort of like a lot of people I've heard speak tonight are sort of like hard-boiled eggs, and I'm sort of a soft-boiled egg at this point. You know, it hasn't gelled a lot.
Yeah.
And I'm being put through an extreme test right now too,
Yeah.
with, you know, I'm trying to be the light. I'm trying to be there for my son right now. I'm trying to just be, you know, a giving, loving mother, but it's very hard.
Yeah. Yeah. How do you maintain the balance and not lose yourself in that process?
Yeah, because he's pretty negative.
Well, he's quicksand.
Yeah.
And he will suck it all in.
There you go. And I'm exhausted.
Oh yeah, absolutely.
I haven't been able to do anything today.
Right.
I think
Yeah.
I don't want that to happen to me,
That
because
is
a lot of this work is about our serenity and our, and taking care of ourselves. So I gave him a date, but that's quicksand. You know, he doesn't really hear it and he doesn't take it seriously. And I guess there's a lot of disrespect I'm
He will
feeling.
take it seriously when the police show up to throw him out.
Yeah.
Hello.
Yeah. Yeah. And that's a hard thing to do.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yep.
So it just like I guess I feel like I'm being tested to the nth degree.
Yeah.
Never, ever in a million years as a parent do you expect to be in this position.
No.
And I don't want to be in this position. And, you know, so I'm really grateful for when I can tune into you and this group and, you know, just keep hearing the positivity and that there is all this growth and that I know I'll head there. I'll come next year too, for sure. But, you know, I feel like where is my higher power taking me, and why can't I get the answer, and why am I so confused, and why do I feel like I'm not in one place or another? So at least I know there is another place that I could be right now, but I know I'm not there.
At least you know that there's a place to go that has a potential solution, and there is hope that it could in fact be a solution for you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So anyway, I just wanted to let you know, what's going on, and that I look forward to starting from the beginning next time. And, you know, I'm right now, I just finished my 3rd step, and instead of having me go on to my 4th step, my sponsor wants me to write down in 10-year increments the traumas I remember.
That's a 4th step. That's doing inventory.
Okay.
Yeah.
So I've sort of been resistant to do that. That's sort of a painful
Yes,
thing.
it will be. Yes.
Yeah. And it's as much energy as I have is being drained right now.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I'll get there, but yeah, I didn't know that was a 4th step. That's interesting.
Well, it's not official part of the
Right.
book, but it's definitely the beginning of inventory. Oh yeah, yeah. To look at your history in 10-year increments. That your sponsor knows what she's doing.
Yeah, I know. She's great. She doesn't have kids, so sometimes she has a hard time relating a little bit to what I'm going through, but I go to parent meetings, and so, you know, I'll get there, and I know I'll be a much better, stronger, wiser, respected.
Yeah.
I'm not
and you'll have the scars to prove it.
I already do. I have so many, but, you know, at least respect is a big word that I'm not having and I'm not getting. And even though you give love and shelter and everything, that doesn't seem to be enough. So I want to learn what that's all about. So anyway, thank you, Herb.
All right. Thanks for allowing us to share your life. That's wonderful. Thank you very much.
You.
Yeah.
Hi, Herb. And everybody else. It's just wonderful hearing these shares. And the teaching tonight was great. But I, so often when I'm sitting and listening to things that are deep or just people's experiences, I have ways of making a picture or an analogy and connecting it with something. And I was just kind of pondering over this whole experience. And I can compare it to the experience that I had when I took my training as an elementary Montessori teacher. I awakened like a light bulb to all those things that I never got in my grammar school years. It was so tangible. It was like broken open. And it was like aha moments. And then the opportunity to practice a little bit or to share a little bit, and then come back and, have discussions about that. But then the overall, when it was over, I had an album of information and I didn't have the practice. And the information became my storehouse of go-to. And in the classroom, I was confronted with children that all at once and having to do exactly what that said.
Yeah.
So I can see that same type of thing here, where I have transcribed everything you've said. It's all handwritten. And it's just like those albums. And so my practice is in this area of spirituality. The realm is different. It's a new experience of being in this realm of spirituality and having, it's like popcorn popping. Every now and again, it's like
I like the image. I like the image. No, that's great. Yes, right. Popcorn. It's in this oven that's warm, and the different kernels are popping at different times, unpredictably. That's wonderful. Great image.
So it was just, to me, it's just been so marvelous. And let's see, let me just see here. One of the things, but in order to gain the craft, in order to build the craft, I have to do the work. And the work is all in the spiritual area. It's maintaining the spiritual shield. It's working on the meditation. It's doing the prayer. I was talking to somebody tonight who said it was really hard for them to define the word prayer. And I thought, not for me anymore. Yeah. but it was, it's all of those things. It's not just one thing. It's a conglomerate. Right. And if just like concrete, it's a conglomerate with all the stones in it. You get a crack in it, the thing falls apart.
Yeah.
So that's really my work from here on in. But it's nice to know that I can go back for a refresher. And
I'm going to add just a little bit to that, because it's a great metaphor to talk about this process, and that is now you've got your transcription, which is your album of knowledge, and you've had some experience because you've done that work. But now as you practice that and access it and incorporate it, it changes you. But then, and this is what I want to add, when you help somebody else access the albums, it becomes even more real for you.
Yeah, I mean, it was the same kind of idea, because imparting that to a child, what I had, right, I had to bring it to their level.
That's
and
it.
Just like you have said, I have to start where they are, So it'll be a whole new experience in sponsoring again with, but got to keep that.
Just be authentic with your own knowledge and your own experience. Don't try to be something that you're not.
I'm not.
No, I know it was more for everybody's sake. Try to just be who you are. Yeah. No, that's right. Thank you so much.
I'm getting little peaks, and it's great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you. All right, I've reframed this a little bit. I think it's here. You'll see that I changed the last line. I'm a little poetic license here. I'm calling this now, instead of the St. Francis prayer, because he didn't write it anyway, but I'm calling it the metamorphosis. This is the summary of the change, that transformation. Lord, make me a channel of your peace, that where there is hatred, I may bring love, that where there is wrong, I may bring the spirit of forgiveness, that where there is discord, I may bring harmony, that where there is error, I may bring truth, that where there is doubt, I may bring faith, that where there is despair, I may bring hope, that where there are shadows, I may bring light, that where there is sadness, I may bring joy. That's that turnaround that we talk about. Grant that I may seek rather to comfort than to be comforted, to understand than to be understood, to love than to be loved. For it is by self-forgetting that one finds, it is by forgiving that one is forgiven, it is by dying, and this is where I made the major change, that one awakens to life. We don't need to talk about eternal life. I don't know what's on the other side. I know what's on this side. And that's where I'm going to that's where I'm going to walk my path. So, amen. Thanks, everybody.